My name is Rebecca Rios. I was born in Mexico City, and I speak Spanish, Italian, and English. I speak Spanish extremely fluently, 100%. I speak it with my parents, my grandparents, pretty much my entire family in Mexico. I do speak English a lot more because, especially in college, I don't live with my parents, and I'm not surrounded by a lot of Hispanic people, and all of my friends are primarily American. So I definitely do speak more English, but my mom tries to call me pretty often during the day, so I still speak Spanish, at least on a daily basis. One of my biggest is te quiero, and I think that's a very important word to have in Spanish because the difference between te amo and te quiero, it's very different. And in English, just saying I love you doesn't exactly translate to it because te quiero, the exact translation is I want you. And that's not what you mean when you're telling that to someone, at least not all the time. But I think that's an example that it makes me sad that in English you don't have it, or you can't say that because te amo is just so much more stronger to saying it to someone, and te quiero, you can say it to just people that you honestly really do care about. I've noticed that in relationships, I notice that I start thinking more in Spanish, or that there's a lot of things that I want to say in Spanish that I can't necessarily say in English, or that I just don't know how. So it's interesting to see the dynamic of having only a partner that only speaks English. The other day, I guess 2 weeks ago, with Spanish, I was talking to my parents, and I was talking about a car ramming into something, and so I made up a word and turned it into ramear, and my parents were like, what? They're like to ram. I was like, yeah, like to ram, and they were like, that's not a word. They were like, okay. So my parents have been making a lot of fun of me because of that slip up that I had in Spanish. In English, I forgot how to say bagpipes once because there was a guy playing the bagpipes in someone's apartment, and it was so loud, and I called them the Irish flutes. So, yeah, it depends. My slip-ups, they just really happen spontaneously, just in the moment, if I forget something in one language or in the other. In English, I was talking to a friend of mine about, my mom wants me to help her sell our living room couch or sofa, and I was like, oh, do you know, my mom, we say sala. And so, I mean, that might just be my mom too, and that's just how we talk and we understand each other. And she was like, yeah, help me sell our living room couch. And I was like, okay. So I asked my friend, do you know anyone in Houston that might need a living room couch? And I said a living room. And she was like, what do you mean, a living room? Because I was just translating sala, living room, into English and without thinking about it. And she was like, living room, how are you selling your living room? And I was like, your couch, your furniture in your living room, you can't sell your living room, so what do you have in there that you can sell? And so that was something that I did with my mom, and she eventually understood once I explained myself a little more. But I don't know, the Irish flutes was one in English that I made up. In Spanish, you just suddenly say things and you're like, I don't know what I'm saying. There's a good example of my mom that she said, oh, look, there's a farma. And it was a farm. But that's not how you say farm in Spanish. You say granja. And so my dad was like, okay. There's just a lot of slip-ups from people that I also know that they're the skin. How do you say skin? Or one of my 8-year-old cousins at the time, and she was like, skina. And you're like, okay, that's not it. it's piel. And so it's little things like that you're saying, or mammals. So mamales. And you're like, mamales? They're like, no, that's not what it is. So usually we either pick up words from everyone that said something really wrong, and we start speaking like that just for fun at that point. But yeah. No, I don't have an American accent in Spanish or any sort of weird accent. Sometimes if I'm not with my parents for a while though, I do start saying things that they're like, what? Like, what do you mean? Or I do forget some words or how to say things just because the rhythm, it can be a little harder. But after I'm with them for like a day or two, it's like I just got back in the game of it again. That's a really good question because it's a problem that I've encountered since I was really little. I did move to America when I was 3 months old. So over in Mexico, they're like, oh, you're from over there. You're not really from here. And that's, for me, it's hard because I am really proud to be Mexican. I'm very proud to be Hispanic and Latin. And there are times when I'm like, it sucks that I am not from Mexico. You know, I didn't grow up the same way my parents did in Mexico City, and there's a lot of experiences that they've had that I'm not going to have, or like mariachi music. You know, they know all of the songs, and even the kids that I know, like that are my age over there, they know them too. And I know some of them, but not to the level that they do. And so those are times that I think, okay, maybe I'm not as Mexican as I like to think that I am. Or when I'm over here, everyone is like, oh, you're Hispanic. Like, I can see you and I know you're Hispanic, or you're Latin, or you're something else. And it is like there is a wall. There is some, like, a line, a boundary that I'm trying to cross in both ways. Because, I mean, I did grow up here for 20 years. So, I mean, I am American in the sense that I did my elementary, my high school, all my education has been here. And I did grow up with American friends. I grew up in a suburb and, you know, school buses, and it's a very different lifestyle that you have here compared to in Mexico. And it's a battle that I have between me, because I'm very proud to be Hispanic, but I can't deny that I've grown up here. And I do feel American. I don't really think I have an American accent or a Spanish accent in English or anything. I speak English fluently, and I can't, so it's just interesting, but I'm a little bit of both. I don't like being called Mexican American, interesting enough. As much as that's a good way to describe myself, I think there's a difference between being Mexican American and a Mexican American. So I can't really put a label on myself except for me saying I'm Mexican. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but